My artist name is Lionel the Mastermind, which is Lionel is my middle name. My first name is Brian. My real name is Brian Lionel White Jr. I was born in Baltimore, December 15th, 1990. And I lived there from birth up until I was about 8 or 9 years old. And during that particular time, we were in an environment that was maybe what we call chaotic. It was in the projects. We were in the projects. We were in a struggling environment. We were in an environment where there were 7 of us in our household, and it was me, my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, my 2 uncles, I think other family members as well, but we all lived in this house, and we all tried to make the best of us having a situation where there was no lack of male guidance. You know, my grandmother did the best she could. She was a soldier, man. She was a woman that really kept everybody in line. None of her kids were just bad people. All her kids were pretty decent kids, you know what I'm saying? All different situations and circumstances, but they were all decent kids as well. She did a good job. She just was not very wealthy. She didn't have any money like that, but she did the best she could with 7 kids. She had 7 kids, and some of her kids were grown, and some of her kids moved out, and some of her kids still, stayed with her. And I happened to live in that environment from birth up until about 8 or 9. During that time period, it was dysfunctional because there was no balance. There was no balance. There was nobody really there to watch anybody. My mother, who is was pretty much 18 when she had me, 18, 19. She was a teenager, so she was young, legal but young, still a kid, if you ask me. And my dad was just a year older than her, so he was 19, I guess. So my parents were fairly young when they had me. So they were young and they lived in poverty. So that's a recipe for disaster right there, But they made the best of what they could. My mom worked as a daycare provider around the corner, and she would make maybe $5 an hour in the 90s or whatever. So we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have a lot of connections. It was not the best environment. It was very chaotic at times. My grandmother tried to be as balanced as she could, but with all those kids and no male figure to guide them or to steer them in the right direction, and along with the environment that we lived in, some of them may have gotten into things that they shouldn't have gotten into because of outside influences. I happened to be a kid that was a loner. At the time, I didn't have any brothers or sisters until I got about 8 or 9. You know what I'm saying? Well, a little older than that, because my sister was 4 years younger than me. So about 5 or 6 is, I would say 4 or 5 or 6 is when I had another relative. But my sister moved with her dad, so she really wasn't with us like that. So I never really had a connection to her or anything like that, I guess. Just, it was a lot of dysfunction going on. To speed up that process, like I said, growing up in that environment, I was illiterate as a kid. I didn't go to school. I stayed home. I would skip school. As a 6 to 9 year old kid, I would skip school. I pretty much would act like I would go to school, and then I would go upstairs and play some video games or watch Mo Money or watch what's the movie called, Money Talks, or Friday and stuff like that, because that's what was out at the time. And then I remember watching those movies, man, and they gave me so much, inspiration, and how fun it was to me to watch those movies, because I just love to laugh. You know what I'm saying? I love to laugh. I love to pretty much make people smile. I was always a free-spirited kid. I was always a free-spirited kid that just was who he was. You know what I'm saying? I just never put a label or box in myself. I've always been the same way until now recently, when I just allow myself to be me all the way fully. In society, people put you in boxes. They tell you that this is how you got to be and how you got to behave, and they put these restrictions on you, and they hold you back because their limitations don't understand your thought processes. So for me, I grew up as a loner. I had cousins and family, family members that were around my age, but they lived up the street or they lived in other places, and we'll connect here and there. During my childhood, from 6 is when I experienced what they would call molestation with a older teenage girl who did that to all the boys in our family. You know what I'm saying? And then there was kind of all those interactions with the kids, experimenting and stuff like that as kids and stuff like that. I'm just glad nothing ever went past that, but that one girl did do a lot of things to us, us, the young boys in our family. So that situation occurred, you know what I'm saying, and it has affected certain people and how they see things, especially you being young and you being exposed to that kind of behavior. So now you're a young kid masturbating, you know what I'm saying, and you know what I'm saying, because you get this experience from this person, they teach you these things, this girl teach you all this stuff, now you're masturbating at 6 years old, and then you find your uncle's porn stash, and then jacking off to that at 6. I'm like, wow, this is crazy, right? It's crazy. But I can honestly say I'm so glad that I haven't done anything so horrific that could have, ended or put me in a situation where I was just, thank glory be to God, kids do stuff, and I'm just glad I never went any too far with anything. So God bless God, for keeping me from doing anything to anybody else that could be just detrimental. Fast forward, my childhood was very lonely. I never had anybody. I always learned to be on my own. I had nobody but myself, and I had to learn to be by myself, and that's what I learned, to just become my own best friend. I always felt like the outcast in my family. I never felt like I fit in. I was always different. I always thought different, spoke different. I always talked about, even as a kid, I always talk about being successful and wanting, to create some amazing things and changing lives and doing all this different stuff and wanting to cure cancer and AIDS and stuff like that. That's how I was. I was always this kid with an intriguing mind that just wanted to do good for humanity, but just didn't know how to, because I didn't discover my gifts or talents until I got a little older, so, but my mind was always the same, to want to help, to want to do the right thing, and to want to be inquisitive and to ask questions. And I felt like I never fit in with that society. I felt like I never fit in with my family, because my family was so much different from me. I never seen the world like they did. They saw the world in the way that their environment was, and I saw the world like I could just see me dreaming and creating all these amazing things. So I just never fit in. I never talked like everybody else. I never act like everybody else. I just never stood in, and I always felt like isolated and never, never could connect to too many people. I had my cousins. We had great relationships here and there. Some of them was good, and then some of them were fucking bullies. But it is what it is. I still love them to this day. Fast forward, around 9 years old is when I basically, when my stepdad came into the picture, and he married my mom. My mom met this guy who at the time we thought was a decent guy. He came into our life and basically changed our lives. He had a good job. He was doing well for himself, but my mom was beautiful. So I guess, when you got a beautiful mom, she's going to eventually find somebody, a suitor, to help us get out of the hood. And that's what happened. We got out of the hood. This guy came in who seemed like a pretty good guy. He acted as a father figure to me, and I always looked at him like a father figure and respected him. And he did a lot for us. He changed our lives. So I could never not discredit him for not changing our lives. You know what I'm saying? So I'm grateful that he came into my life, and he did give me so much information and game, and learning how to solve problems, and learning to think quick on my feet and having critical skills. I developed that from my father, my stepfather. And he taught me so many different things, and I value that to this day. Fast forward, he got us out of the hood. Now we finally in a middle class neighborhood in Baltimore County, and I'm finally going to school and learning, but I'm behind. So fucking far behind because I never went to school. So I'm, people thinking I'm kind of damn near dumb or something. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't really know any of this stuff. My reading and comprehension levels were really not that good. I wasn't reading on par. My math was pretty good though. But I just needed to do a lot of catching up to do because I didn't go to school. Like I said, nobody was watching me. Everybody was doing what they had to do to survive. Mom was working 12-hour shifts and stuff like that. Father wasn't around. My biological dad wasn't around. He and my mom split up, so he did his thing, and most of the time he was working. Both my parents were workaholics. They worked their ass off to try to make something happen for them in their environment. They had a really tough environment for them, so they had to find some kind of way to become successful. And that required that I wasn't being attended to most of the time, but they were working their ass to try to do something for me. And the little money that my mom was making at the time was $5 an hour. That wasn't cutting it. That wasn't really nothing. You know what I'm saying? To sustain us and get our own place. So when my stepfather came into the picture and he changed our lives, it was like finally we can get ahead a little bit, you know? So I'm going to school, and I'm in Baltimore County at this time, and I'm learning. I'm finally meeting different people now. I'm meeting white kids, black kids, Asian kids, all kinds of different people, mixed kids. I'm finally in another environment where I can get out of a toxic environment and then finally get into an environment where you start meeting different people, you start learning different things. So the great thing about me is I got the chance to see both sides of the fence.